right. I think it's working. We will hopefully find out. And it looks like it. Cool. Just gonna make sure everything's good. That looks like it's going live. This is there. That's good. Everything's great. Awesome. Okay. Welcome to this very late, and by late I mean late in the month, Uncle Adam's Irregulars live show. I appreciate you guys for sticking with me, and I hope that some of you that frequently can't watch it live due to your time zone can be watching it live now, and to those who usually watch it live when I do it on a Saturday at noon Central Time, for those of you, I hope you get to watch it later on, because it's not particularly useful in your neck of the woods at this time. So yeah. Let's see, we've got 11 people currently in there. We've got Howdy from Nebraska, Jason K, how you doing? Jesse Daniels has just got the wet palette. Wet palette is the bomb, as it were. Sad news about Spartan Games. I'm meeting with my client in about an hour to change his commission. He had me working on an FSA force, but the Kickstarter left a sour taste in his mouth. Sour taste in his mouth, I suppose. Yeah, it is a bummer about Spartan. I mean, it was weird that there were like 3 companies that kind of all sort of announced their closure, all 2 of them I think within the same day, 3 of them within the same week. So there was Spartan Games, who made Firestorm Armada and Dystopian Wars and a bunch of other stuff. Also Halo, something Halo related that I never really I mean, I saw it like from afar at maybe Adepticon, Halo Fleet Battles or something like that. They basically said, well, we're shutting down. And then Tor Gaming, they also shut down the same, announced their shutdown the same day. They made a game called Relics, which was kind of Stitch Punk, I guess you'd call it. So it's little weird puppets and kind of stuff like that. And then right around the same time, On the Lam Games also announced that they were shutting down. They made a game called Brushfire, which had really nice miniatures. You know, they were all like little badgers and bears and but like not like anthropomorphized like cartoon. I don't know if you've ever seen Mouse Guard, the comic. They kind of looked like that. So anyway, yeah, it was kind of a bummer. BJ Morph says, condolences again, Adam. Really appreciate you still doing the show. Well, it's, you know, I appreciate that. It's been a tough week, but yeah, so that's where we're at. Josh McCarthy asks, was Tor Gaming affiliated with Tor Publishing? No. Tor, I guess, is just a old English word for tower, I think. So yeah, Tor Publishing, way bigger, lots of big corporation, possibly owned by another publishing corporation. Tor Gaming was predominantly kind of a guy that I'm friends with on Facebook, Gavin Moorcroft. I don't know that he was much bigger than that. I mean, he had people that worked with him, you know, and he had probably freelance artists and freelance sculptors and things like that. But from what I could tell from Facebook, he was spinning the molds himself. I mean, he was doing a big portion of it himself. So, yeah, that's kind of a bummer. Stitch Punk, never heard that term before. Yeah, neither had I, actually, until this whole thing came about. I mean, I knew about Relics, and that Relics is different than Relic Knights. They're totally different. Relic Knights is like super crazy anime robot shenanigans, whereas Relics is a little skirmish game with weird little like puppet soldiers and weird little orcs and stuff like that. Some of the earlier models were really not my cup of tea, but some of the stuff that I had seen come out most recently, I thought, oh, that's really nice looking. They've gotten like a good deal better. Kind of like if you go back and look at the old books for Malifaux, like version 1, version 1.5. Version 1 book is absolutely, it makes me cringe, a lot of the artwork in there. And then in 1.5, you'd be like, this is a terrible piece, this is a terrible piece, then you'd be like, wow, that's a great looking piece. And then when 2 came along, basically they had got that artist who did some of the great looking pieces in 1.5, and then that person just did all of the art, it seems, I think, from now on. So that person's probably full-time job is just doing art from Malifaux now, because all their artwork looks amazing. I've gotten off track, but nonetheless, yeah, so that was kind of a bummer about seeing some of that stuff. Let's see here. It was fleet battles and ground combat for Halo. Really? Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of astounded, I gotta say, when Spartan got the license for that, for the Halo stuff, because I kind of figured that would be something that some other bigger company would probably take on. So maybe they paid a whole bunch of money for the license, and then maybe that's what sunk them. I don't know. I haven't heard any kind of talk about what kind of stuff, what the problems were. I know some people are just like, well, it's really, really difficult to start out as a small company these days, and it kind of go that direction. And a lot of that is true. The price of tin keeps going up, which affects if you make metal miniatures. Injection molded plastic miniatures have an incredibly expensive buy-in, to make the molds. Resin is here and there. So, yeah, I can see that being difficult. I don't know. I think that, there's a lot of things these days. If you try to get to a point, I think, where you're like, well, marketing is a problem because we don't have the money for that. And it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't have the money for marketing, you're not going to be able to sell enough games to be able to raise the money to be able to do more marketing, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. If I was going to try to start something gaming related, like any kind of a rule set or anything, well, first of all, personally, if I was going to start something, A, I would keep my day job, and B, I would probably just make a rule set and then make it so that other people could, you could use whatever miniatures you want. Now, you're not going to get rich doing that, but frankly, you're not going to get rich in the miniatures hobby to begin with. That's just kind of the way it works. I don't think. I don't know any really rich guys, driving really fancy cars who work in wargaming. So there's that. But I don't know. If I was to get into it, I would probably ease into it by just trying to make a cool rule set. And if people liked it, cool. And if they didn't, they didn't. That's the way it kind of works. Excuse me. Let's see here. So Jason says, I was looking through the new releases on Forge World before the show and noticed that their new hot model kit was Bard's Kids from The Hobbit. And then he goes on to say, I'll bet that was a fun assignment meeting. Mark, you do Primaris. Bill, you design the new Death Guard. Stan, you get Bard's Kids. That's kind of a bummer. Yeah, it's... The Lord of the Rings stuff is interesting with Games Workshop. The original Lord of the Rings strategy battle game was actually a really cool game. It was quite a bit different than anything else that Games Workshop was putting out. Again, I think that was a licensing issue where I think it was really expensive, and I think it did things to their company to some degree. I've always heard rumors that the reason they used to be so secretive for a long time, for years and years, they had to be so secretive, was because of the license from New Line Cinema, the guys that did Lord of the Rings and all that. So maybe that's part of the reason. I don't know. But yeah, I got to say, though, I don't know what it is. I've just really never been super excited by any of the models in that line, except relatively recently, they put out Lake Town House Plastic Terrain, which is spectacular if you want just a not too crazy looking, but kind of medievally fancy. Could be fantasy, could just be straight up medieval, little houses and docks and stuff like that. So I bought one of those kits so I could, use it for stuff. But it's just a really nice plastic kit. And that's on the regular GW site. It's not on Forge World. So, yeah. Josh McCarthy says that rumor was that there was a principal's health issues that played a part in Spartan. That's also a big deal. So I hadn't heard that, but that would make some sense. I mean, there's definitely plenty of examples of companies that have had to kind of shut down due to Just, you can't plan for everything, So, yeah, I could definitely see that. Jesse says, I think the issue is the ongoing license cost for it and the fact that they were supporting the launch of Halo. They didn't support their normal product lines. Yeah, I mean, those expensive licenses, I don't know. I just wonder if they really pay off or not. I guess it depends. If you can get the right license and do it. Like, look at Mantic. I was going to show you some Mantic stuff in a little bit, actually. Like, they did the Mars Attacks, which couldn't have been that expensive of a license because the movie was 20 years old. Walking Dead, but the comic, not the TV show. So, there's that. That's probably cheaper, obviously, than doing the TV show license. What other license stuff that they've done? Just it's interesting that they've kind of been putting so much time into their license stuff, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that stuff plays out. I mean, they do well enough in the Kickstarters, but I don't know what that really comes to at the end. Like, a lot of Kickstarters can do really, really well, but then after all the stuff they promise and then they sometimes don't end up making as much money as you would think. So, yeah. VJ Morph says, frankly, I'm surprised Fantasy Flight got the Star Wars license to the new Star Wars game. Well, I mean, they already had the license for X-Wing. I mean, Fantasy Flight, aka Asmodee, that one didn't surprise me that much, the license, just because they were already doing X-Wing, so it made sense that they'd probably be able to. What surprised me was the fact that they've decided to do another Star Wars game so quickly. It feels like, to me, between X-Wing, Armada, Imperial Assault, and now Legion, specifically Imperial Assault and Legion, I could see there being some cannibalizing of sales there, and that doesn't seem like a super smart move, but I'm not a business guy, so it's hard to say, really. Yeah, VJ says, I wouldn't have thought that they had the funds. Well, like I said, I think because Fantasy Flight's got the biggest selling war game in the world right now with X-Wing, because it's outselling 40K, or at least it was. The last 2 quarters, it outsold 40K, according to the ICV2 website. They do a quarterly report, and for non-collectible miniatures, the last 2 quarters, X-Wing's been on top, and 40K's been on second. I have a suspicion that may change this year, or this next quarter, or whatever, because of the release of 8th edition and all that. It could be a really, good... I think it's going to be a very good quarter, or a couple of quarters, for the guys over in Nottingham, so that'll be interesting. So yeah, I suppose with X-Wing they'd be paying this Star Wars license for that too. Yeah. So Adam, keeping things light, how about some more Gen Con swag? Well, that's some stuff that I've got nearby here. Let me see. So what have we got? Well, so I showed a little bit of this. Let me put on the other camera. There we go. I showed a little bit of this in the Sunday show, but you guys will get to see it maybe a little bit closer up so you can see some of the paint details. So like I said, this was pre-painted. I bought 2 of these. One's, I think, slightly bigger than this, and it was like $40. I mean, look at the texture for like the kind of plastery stuff. This is like a Tudor-style house. So you got the beams. You've got some of the stuff kind of peeling away there, so you can see the wood underneath. You've got little notches and all kinds of damage, it looks like, to the stuff here. Am I doing this? I'm doing this upside down. I apologize. It looked right side up to me. Nope, now it's upside down. I was right the first time. There we go. Okay. So, like, if you look at this really cool, I mean, I may just dirty this up a little bit, frankly. That's about all I'm going to do is dirty it up a little. Maybe hit with the airbrush and some brown wash. But it's really surprisingly nice. Because it's damaged, and I'm assuming that it was supposed to have been burned, I may darken up these edges along where the wall's broken. I might do a little bit of that. So that would maybe be some dry brushing or something like that. But otherwise, yeah, this is really surprisingly nice stuff. Now the downside is, like we kind of found out on Sunday, is that it doesn't seem to be listed on their website. So I'm not quite sure what that's all about. But yeah, so I've got the first stuff that I purchased from Adepticon back in earlier part of this year, and then I was glad to see they had the stuff also here at Gen Con. I was talking about Mantic a second ago, and if I can get this out, there we go. One thing I did pick up was the Dead Zone 2.0 rulebook. Now, I had a PDF of this because I was in on the original Kickstarter for Dead Zone. I didn't buy the game. I just bought the terrain. They had like a support level where for, I don't know, it was like $90. You got a big honking box of that terrain, the Battle Zone stuff, which at the time they weren't selling or anything separate. So, I was like, well, I don't know about the game, but I'll definitely be interested in the terrain. And so then later on, after the Kickstarter and after it had been in stores, all of a sudden I ended up deciding to buy it because I thought, well, and I bought it from my local store and I put it together, painted two of the forces, the Plague versus the Enforcers, and then we never really played it amongst my friends because the rule book was kind of and there was all the cards and all the stuff. So when they decided to come out with a 2.0 rule set, I was interested, and then I received an email saying, hey, here's where you can download your PDF. And so I've read it a little bit, but I haven't got a chance to really dig into it. But on Sunday during Gen Con, I stopped by the Mantic booth and I talked to Ronnie for a little bit and chatted. And so I ended up buying this is like a hardcover book. It's the main rule book for skirmishes on Forsaken Worlds, and then they've gotten rid of the cards and that whole dynamic all told, and now they are selling these dice, these command dice. So you're basically using them more as markers. It's not like you're rolling them and going, oh, I guess I'm going to attack this turn. It's kind of like they do it in Bolt Action, where you in Bolt Action, you dig a die out of the bag, and then you go, okay, well, these guys are going to do this, and then you just turn it to the right side, and then you mark, this is what they're doing. So there's like 6 dice in there. So kind of expensive, frankly, for 6 dice, but I was like, well, it's Gen Con, which I'm sure a lot of these companies really kind of depend on. Getting one side of a die custom built or custom done is not so expensive, but companies like Chessex, like the company that I get my custom dice through, they will do all 6 sides, but they get substantially more expensive when they do it that way. So, yeah, that was interesting. And then I also picked up Ghost Archipelago, which is the new kind of Frostgrave. It's interesting. I'm interested in the concept. It's weird that it's Frostgrave, but on a tropical island. Seems not very frosty, but that's kind of where it's at. So I talked a little bit with Joseph at Gen Con, and we talked a little bit about it, and he said basically it was because it's its own standalone war game. If you can read it. In this new war game set in the world of Frostgrave, players take on the role of Herod, blah, blah. So it's its own thing, but it allowed him, he said, to be able to go through and do some kind of tweaks and changes and things like that. So I kind of want to go through and read it, see what kind of stuff's going to happen in that, and check that out. And then I did also pick up... they've started doing novels. I mean, it makes sense. They're a publishing company. But yeah, this one's called Tales of the Lost Isles, which I think is the initial novel. So I'm going to give this a read and see what it's like. It's not written by... I think it's actually a list of short stories. Yeah, it's a bunch of short stories. So it's not written by one person. It's a bunch of short stories, which I like even a little bit better now. I had originally thought it was just all one, but it's not. Let's see. Let me hit the chat real quick. Go back over here. All right. So let me try to catch up a little bit. Cool. I think that Fantasy Flight has all Star Wars games that's not just a skin like Monopoly. So you may be right. They may have a license that allows them to basically make any kind of Star Wars games they want, except for Star Wars Monopoly or Star Wars... Sorry, I don't know. Do they even do that? I've never seen any versions of Sorry that have been, at least not in America. Maybe in Canada. Let's see here. What else have we got? Looks great. Is that resin? It's like a it's I don't know what the heck it is. It's a hard. It's not like ABS plastic. I don't know what it is. It's maybe resiny. It's resin-ish, but it's pretty. I've dropped a smaller piece once before, and it did crack, like, and a piece popped off, but it didn't like shatter, and it takes damage pretty well. I mean, like just regular wear and tear. So yeah, that stuff, Chris, is made by Gale Force 9. I bought it at the Gale Force 9 booth at Gen Con. So it's Battlefield in a box, and they do still sell Battlefield in a box stuff on the Gale Force 9 website, but I don't think that they're currently selling these pieces, and I don't know why. I picked up the first ones at Adepticon. Maybe it's just a bunch of pieces that they had made, and they're only selling them through conventions. Sometimes I really don't understand that company. I really don't. So, what else have we got? Considered. Patrick said the Gale Force 9 Battlefront guys were selling that house at Historicon. Considered getting it, but me and Buddy have decided to go headfirst into 3D printing. That's also pretty cool too. So, actually, I received 2 days ago some STL files, which are the 3D shape files from a company that I talked to at Gen Con, actually, called Rocket Pig Games, and they sent me some files, so I'm going to try to print some stuff out, and because I'm going to be doing a video about, you want to print your own stuff, but you don't want to design it because you don't know how, so there are companies out there, Rocket Pig, printablescenery.com, there are a bunch of different companies. There's the third one, I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but they sell you the files, and then you just print as much junk as you want, so that's kind of a cool idea, too. Dead Zone. So is that a war game about getting into a car accident and having to stop Martin Sheen from starting the apocalypse? Technically, no. But, I mean, you could probably make it that way. I mean, you could just decide that was your narrative if you wanted to go that way. You'd have to be Christopher Walken, and you'd have to probably practice the voice. I can't do it. So anyway, yeah, no, it's not that. It's a original IP from Mantic, which is cool because sometimes they don't do that. And yeah, it was kind of their Necromunda, sort of. It's a very small skirmish game. Like, you can play it on a 2 foot by 2 foot, but it's also designed to be 3-dimensional because of that cool terrain stuff. So I do want to play it because I've got stuff all painted for it, and like literally, I got all the stuff done. Took it to Adepticon 2 or 3 years ago. We all set it up one night in one of the open tables, and we're going to play. And then we started reading the instructions for the first time, and I mean, we were drunk. Let's not be honest. Let's be perfectly honest. We had had some cocktails, but even sober later on, I was like, man, some of this is really thick. And so, from what I understand now, the new 2.0 rules are way better. So, looking forward to that. And yeah, the Dead Zone terrain, it's called Battle Zone Systems or something like that. That's what they sell through the Mantic website. And that stuff is really cool. It makes great... I mean, it's not particularly... It's very modular, but that means that a bunch of it does kind of look the same. But if you're kind of smart about it, you can make it look really sort of interesting. I mean, the way that they kind of explain it in the original rules was that the terrain that you were using was basically parts of shipping containers from the colony ships that came to these different planets. And like when the colony ship came and they took everything out of the ships and they just took the shipping containers apart and started putting them together to make buildings and things like that. So when I painted mine, I tried to make them look as much like the shipping containers that I see going by on the train as possible. Like when you're sitting and waiting for a train to go by, and they're all those kind of like pale sun-bleached blue, pale sun-bleached orange, and pale sun-bleached like green, shipping containers and stuff. So I picked those main colors, and then I did a bunch of like rust effects and stuff like that to them and chipping, and then I used the stuff from Secret Weapon Miniatures, and it's a Secret Weapon wash called Parchment. And when it's a light, almost bone color, and when you brush that onto stuff, it just makes it look like it's been sitting in the sun for quite a while. And it works out really super well. So I'll have to show you guys pictures and stuff eventually. Let's see here. I can accept command dice for a game, but not custom for rolling, attack, and for damage. Yeah, you know what I mean? I mean, like, it makes sense if you have potentially 6 different things, states for your unit, then I would be like, well, we could put them on dice, and then you could just pick the right one. But if you had to roll it randomly to see what was happening to them, I mean, you can, that's fine, but it seems a little random. But when you're like, okay, well, we've made this game and it's basically, it's an 8-sider, but it's got custom symbols on it. And my thought would be like, well, all those symbols could be numbers because it's an 8-sider. You know what I mean? You could say that on a 1 through 3 this happens, and on a 4 through 6 this happens, and on a 7, 8 this happens, or whatever. I mean, there's no. Sometimes it annoys me that this whole this custom dice thing you see. I mean, like with Games Workshop stuff, they love making custom dice, but they make them, except for Blood Bowl, all the rest of the custom dice they make are just normal dice. They just like to make fancy looking dice because they know collectors like to buy that stuff. So if you don't want to, you don't have to. You know what I mean? You can use regular dice. Most of the dice that I have in my bag are either my own dice, with the Tabletop Minions ones, or dice that I've bought from Adepticon, or dice that I got from board games. I would go to thrift stores and buy old crappy like copies of Yahtzee and stuff like that, and then just take the 6-siders out of them, because for like a quarter you could buy Yahtzee and get like 5 or 6 dice, but if you bought those same dice separately, they'd be 50 cents a piece. So I was like, well, it doesn't make any sense. What else have we got? I'm way behind now in the chatting. You guys have been talking it up, which is good. Shirls says, I was looking at some cardstock multi-level terrain, not the card stuff, but I have to admit that this stuff looks pretty amazing. Yeah, it is. It's nice stuff. Patrick says, I would be in for a Tabletop Minions t-shirt. Okay. I may have missed where we were talking about merchandise, but I'm kicking around the idea again. So for those of you that maybe weren't around in 2016 necessarily, early 2016, I did a t-shirt sale. So I came up with a design. I got 24 of them printed, worked out a deal with a local printer who I know, a local screen printer, and I said, hey, can you print me 24 and then not clean out the screens right away? Can you wait? And because otherwise, when you get something screen printed, as soon as they get it done, they want to clean the design out of the screen, not the ink, but the actual design, so that they can then reuse the screens. They don't keep screens sitting around with your design on it. So I said, can you hold on to these though? Because then I'm going to try to sell, a bunch and get pre-orders. And then, so he was, yeah, that's cool. So I got 24, which was the bare minimum he could do, just so I could have some to show, like actual printed versions and not mock-ups. So I was wearing one in the video and I did all this. And so I did a 3-week thing, like a pre-order, and then people could pay ahead, and then I knew exactly how many of each size I needed and all that stuff, and where they were going to go, and the shipping and all that jazz, and it worked out pretty well. I'm kicking around the idea though of starting more of a store, like an online like t-shirt print on demand type store. A lot of those can be super crazy expensive, but I found one recently that was pretty good price wise, which I was a little surprised by actually. So yeah, we'll give that. I may be doing that, but then the upside to that is that it wouldn't be like a 3-week period of like if you paid like right away at the beginning when it first went up live, you didn't get it for a month because it was 3 weeks of other people being able to pay up front, and then there was like a week or so of printing and shipping and all that jazz. So this would be a lot quicker turnaround. Plus, I could do more than just one design, so I could do maybe several designs. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm thinking about it. The research that I've been doing is trying to find a cool, decent print on demand company that does good work, is not too expensive, and also has facilities in the EU. So if you were, one of the problems that I had last time was that the price of shipping in America had gone up for overseas just before I did it. They went up in 2016 January, and I started this sale in February. So all of a sudden it was going to cost, it was like, I don't know, $13 or $14 to ship a t-shirt to the UK or something crazy like that, maybe more. So yeah, it was kind of nuts. So having a facility in the EU would save on shipping outside of America is basically the plan. So anyway, that's where that's at right now. Josh says that the Tabletop Minions dice roll really well. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. Let's see. I'm probably way behind. Thanks, Adam. I couldn't find it on the Gale Force 9 site, so I was confused. I wanted them to shut up and take my money. I know. Gale Force 9 does a lot of stuff that I'm like, what would you, if you just kept doing it, people would keep buying it. I made a video about it years ago about how some game companies don't like money. One of the companies I was talking about was Gale Force 9. So, yeah. Josh McCarthy says the open lock system is taking off for 3D terrain. That's a 3D printing kind of thing for people who are making different types of terrain, which is kind of cool. Mr. Bristol says, any news you can share about your app for linking people up together that you're doing in your day job? Sounds like such a good potential idea. Yes. The original plan was we were going to have it in the app stores in beta by, I'm getting warm, so I'm going to take off my sweatshirt. We were going to have it in the app stores by Gen Con was the plan. So when I went to Gen Con, I was going to be showing it off and telling people, hey, just go download it because it's in beta, but you can download it. Well, the problem with self-funding as a company is that it's the problem is not that the problem is that we've had too much regular business. Like we have to do regular jobs, and I don't mean we come into all to work. We have to do stuff for clients, so they pay us, and then in our in-between times we can work on our own project. If we went out and got some sort of venture capital funding or something like that, then we could just be like, okay, cool, we're going to just, self-fund, or we're going to, take that money, and then that will just pay everyone's salary and we'll just work on this one thing. Well, we don't want to do that. So we do client work to help pay for the app that we want to do, that we eventually want to make our whole full-time job amongst everybody. Everyone's dream at the company, and there's only 7 of us, but everyone's dream is to eventually not have to do client work anymore and just work on our own stuff. The problem is that we've had a ton of client work, which is a good problem to have. It's better than the opposite. But because of all this client work, we've been slow, frankly, on the app Game 4. So now our plan is we're having a big meeting about it and going over where we're at on Friday at work. We want to go through and figure out what's going on. Well, not figure out. We want to basically show everybody in the company, the 7 of us, where everybody else is at, the iOS, the Android, the web stuff, the back end, all that jazz, and kind of just have a pep rally to some degree. So we're going from there. And we're hoping to have it in the stores by October-ish. So that's kind of where we're saying fall. I would like to be able to I would love to go to Valhalla, which is the 7th to the 12th. I'm going to Valhalla, but I would like to go there with it being in the stores for beta use. But we'll see. At the very least, we're looking at definitely in fall, early winter if everything goes weird and we just can't keep clients from knocking on our door. So that's kind of where that's at. But it's looking good. I was showing the app in its current state on iOS to people at Gen Con. The problem was we had a bunch of fake events in there so that I could show people, hey, look, this is what the fake events look like. But they were all based off of my zip code, the zip code where I live. And then when I went to Indiana, then I was quite a ways away from my zip code. So then all the events didn't show up. And then we didn't really get it fixed until I got back, at which point it didn't really matter. So, yeah, that's what we're doing. Patrick says, by the way, I like the evening chats, gaming conversation with bourbon. Oh, see, I should have had some bourbon. I hadn't thought of that. Josh says, he's responding to VJ about the 3D printing terrain stuff, the open source. Yeah, Yahtzee, that's one way to get cheap dice. Basically, any kind of like weird beat up super cheap kind of games, board games, that you find at rummage sales, which are also known as yard sales or garage sales. Evidently a rummage sale is just a Wisconsin thing. Like I just saw, you see those maps sometimes that tell you, well, this part of America says soda and this one says pop and this, and that kind of stuff. And it was basically yard sale and garage sale, and then just Wisconsin-ish area said rummage sale. Anyway, that's another good place to pick up cheap dice if you just want, because in some games you just need a ton of dice. 40K can be like that. Like if you're orcs, you're gonna need a lot of dice. So I just kind of went on a tear for a while and was doing that. VJ Morph says Cafe Press. Cafe Press is still really expensive. They were like the first. They were the first. I remember back in the late 90s when I was using Cafe Press. That's how long they've been around. You would order something from them, you would upload the graphic, and then you would get it, and you could see like the line, like they would basically print it onto iron-on and then cut it out with scissors and then iron it on the shirt for you and mail it back, and you could see kind of like where the edge of the iron-on was. It was not great. Now all these companies just print directly onto the fabric with like some sort of crazy inkjet that's designed for clothing, and so that works great. The company I was looking at was actually Teespring, and I believe it's Teespring. And I don't know that any of you guys were at the meetup at some of you watching this later maybe was at the meetup at Gen Con, but I was wearing a t-shirt that I had printed through Teespring, and I thought the quality was pretty good. So yeah, definitely. Josh says he has access to a laser cutter now. Tabletop Minions paint racks could easily be a thing. That's interesting. All right. Let's see here. I tend to work my other job on Saturdays and miss that Irregular show. And VJ says, have to say this is a fantastic time of day for the Irregular show. Hint, hint. Well, we'll see how it goes. Jesse says, if everything goes right, then when you're at LVO, drop flyers off. Yeah, definitely. We definitely got to have it ready by LVO. That reminds me, I have to get plane tickets for LVO. So those of you that don't know, LVO is the Las Vegas Open. It's done by the people from Frontline Gaming out of San Diego, but it happens in Vegas. It started basically just as a big 40K tournament, and it's becoming more than that by quite a bit. It's all miniatures focus, it's all wargaming, but it's not just 40K tournament now. There's other stuff going on, and there's demos, and there's even vendors. I mean, it's not, from what I understand, it's still not nearly as big as Adepticon. It's maybe half as big as Adepticon, which is pretty cool. It's happening end of January. I think every year it happens around the end of January. So I am going this year, is the plan. I had a meeting actually at Gen Con with Frankie. Not Frankie. Reese, sorry. I met with Reese for about 2 hours. We sat and talked and had a really good meeting. And that was at Gen Con this year. He's a good guy. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that. I'm hopefully going to be doing some seminars actually at LVO, talking about YouTubery, all this kind of stuff. I'm going to do a couple of seminars and whatnot. So I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Yeah, definitely. Right, Jesse Daniel, you were there. That's right, I remember. Yes, all those pesky clients. No, I know. Like I said, there's way worse things to have a problem, but it is because we didn't want to try to do like a Kickstarter. I mean, the thing is when I was hired there, Milk Can, which is the company I work for, has been a company for quite some time, since like 2015. So previous to that, it was the three owners. They all just were freelancers, and they all kind of worked together to share like office space. And they decided to make a company, and then they did that. And then they hired another guy, and then they hired me, and now since then they've hired 2 more developers. So right now we're 5 developers and 2 designers. And the other designer is a partner, and 2 of the other developers are partners. So, but basically everybody there is a tabletop gamer. One guy doesn't realize it yet, but he will be. So yeah, we've got 2 guys who are into war games, 2 guys who are really into board games. Another guy who's into RPGs. The other guy's kind of into board games, plays a little bit of CCG, I think, as well, maybe. Yeah, so I think it's going to work out well. It's just trying to get the time together, and then being able to. I mean, basically, once it goes live, I will become pretty much like the stakeholder, where I'll be the one who's, out there doing the stuff and making it happen and trying to get people on board and do all the stuff, and I'll be kind of handling a lot of that. We do want to start making our own content as well, so we'll probably start a YouTube channel and go through all that rigmarole and start making videos to kind of spread the word and do stuff like that. So yeah, it's gonna be really interesting, but it's been slower than we wanted. We wanted to have it ready in beta by summer, maybe even a little earlier. But it's yeah. So it's just that we've had so much other paying business that we've got to do. So again, like I said, pesky clients are not that big of a problem. They just slow things down. Alfred says, greetings from Portland, Oregon. Great program. I love my Spartan Games miniatures. Great ships. Too bad that they are gone. I'll have to focus on my combined Eldar and Imperial army instead. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, it's Spartan. You know, I played a demo once of Firestorm Armada. That was the sci-fi one. Yes, I played that one. I played a demo of that at Gen Con, like, gosh, 2012 maybe. And I knew a couple of people around here who played on and off. But otherwise, there wasn't a lot of exposure in the area where I lived for it. So, yeah. Yeah, Josh said he'll be thinking about getting shirts. Look at Teespring. I think it's spelled T-E-E, spring, not T-spring. That might help you better with Google. Mr. Bristol says, thanks for your recent advice on gluing Finecast and stripping with Dettol, by the way. Really helped. Slowly making progress with an Inquisition force. Very narratively satisfying. We'll probably get hit for 6. Yeah, I want to kind of add some Inquisition, I think, to maybe my Imperials once I get my Imperials done, maybe down the road. Because I have a whole bunch of Inquisition army pieces. I bought a bunch eBay, stripped them, bought them at all kinds of different places. I was buying up a bunch of the old Inquisition models, Crusaders, and some Acolytes and Flagellants, and all kinds of different stuff. Because I was going to originally make them an ally back when their original digital codex came out back in 2014 or whatever. And then I stopped playing 40K altogether, and they've all been sitting in a box. So now I'm thinking of bringing them back a little bit. Also thinking that I also bought a whole bunch of old school Legions of the Damned. I've got a bunch of figures of that too, so I might work those guys in there as well. Probably going to work a Vindicare Assassin into my list as well, because you can, A, and B, you know, they're pretty cool. Yeah. And especially, I kind of like the new model even more than the original model, although I don't like how he's got like a really super scenic base that he comes with, which I kind of don't like so much. I might tweak that, but we'll see. Let's see here. Josh McCarthy says, how many are on now versus on Saturdays? It's about the same. Right now we've got about 16 watching. We're usually between 16 and 18 on Saturdays. You know, there's always going to be one time that, well, that's the thing, is that one time works for one person and doesn't work for another, and back and forth. So, yeah, but maybe switching it up. I mean, I was just trying to keep it steady, so I was always trying to do it on the Saturday that was closest to the 20th. I don't exactly know how I ended up with doing it that way, but I did. And then noon just kind of worked best, because I figured it would work well for the people in the UK kind of area and all that stuff. But with technically the 20th this year I was at Gen Con, so couldn't do it, and then my dad passed and all that. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'll keep an eye on just, maybe I'll just switch back and forth from time to time and we'll see how it goes. Give everybody a chance. Something along those lines. VJ Morph says, so I've hit a wall with my painting. Has anyone thought of starting a painting circle to get swap models, to get ones you just can't stand to look at finished? Oh, I see. So you send a model to somebody else and then it's okay. I guess I've not heard of that before. That's a good question. I mean, I've heard about mini, what the heck are they called? Mini exchanges, where basically you get a bunch of names together and then, you know, you paint a miniature for somebody else, but they don't send it to you. Usually you just buy something or figure out what kind of game they play, and then you find something and you paint it and send it to them. I did one of those like last year at Christmas time with some guys, mostly from the Chicago area, that I know through moderator Matt from Wreckage. And I've kicked around the idea of doing something like that maybe next year for Adepticon, because then everybody would bring it to Adepticon. We could have a meetup and everybody could trade their stuff around. I don't know, but I've been thinking about that. The concept of just sending it to somebody else and then having someone else send something to you, that's interesting. But like I said, I have not heard of that exactly. Clicking through. Jesse says, so if things go well, small table at Adepticon for the app? Gosh, maybe. I mean, it depends on, frankly, it depends on how, depends on where they have space, maybe, and if they have any space left. This year at Adepticon, this was the first year where they decided to just basically open up vending and just because it used to be, from what I understand, if you wanted to vend, if you wanted to have a booth at Adepticon, you had to not pay them, but you had to give them a whole bunch of stuff, enough stuff that they could stuff all of the swag bags with it. So maybe you sold dice and you could throw some dice in there, or you sold bits, or you whatever, and you'd chuck this stuff in there. Well, that leaves some companies out of the ability to be able to have a vending booth, because maybe they make 3x3 gaming mats. Well, they're not going to throw one of those into every bag, right? So they finally decided this last year, now you just pay for a booth, and then there you go. So but we wouldn't really be selling anything per se, so maybe we'd be able to pay them to be in a different spot, like not in the vendor hall, but maybe like in the main hallway. Kind of like if you guys were at Adepticon last year, you know where the Wreckage table was. It was out like in the demo area, and there was also Broken Colony and Giga Robo and a couple other in that main hallway. So maybe we could do something like that. But yeah, something to think about, definitely. Patrick says, have you seen Sarastro's painting guide for the Star Wars Legion Luke Skywalker? A great looking paint job. No, I haven't. I've never really watched any of his. I think I watched like part of one of his videos once, and I was like, wow, he really puts a lot of time into the like production value and stuff like that. And I read something somewhere, I don't remember where, but it was him being quoted as saying it takes him, what did he say, something like 40 hours to make each video, which I'm like, wow, that's crazy. So I'm assuming this must be his day job, because otherwise that's a lot of time to spend when you already have a job where you maybe work 40 hours. So I don't know much about his stuff, but I didn't know. It's interesting that he painted one for Star Wars Legion, so I'm assuming he must be working directly with Fantasy Flight, because otherwise I don't know where he would have gotten the model. They must have sent him a copy or something, which is cool. It's nice. It's cool for him that's the case. Speaking of having stuff sent early from the company, I did not talk to my contact at Weta Workshops, but I talked to her cohort, I think is probably the best term, from Weta. I was at Weta is the company that makes Giant Killer Robots, which is coming out very soon. It's going to ship for the Kickstarter backers soon. And they had a booth at Gen Con, a good-sized booth. And so I was kind of walking around looking at all the cool stuff in their booth, and they were giving demos and doing all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, this woman was like, oh, hey, Uncle Adam. And then she came over, and she was not the woman that I dealt with, but she, like I said, like her desk was next to that woman's back in New Zealand. So, yeah, we talked about a bunch of stuff, and I got to see, like, the final like production copies of like what it's going to look like when you get it, like what the paint jobs are going to look like. They're amazingly really decent good paint jobs for being basically, like I said, pre-paints. So yeah, but it was cool that they were able to send me production. They weren't the normal versions that they're going to be sending out to the painter people, the people who bought the painter level in Kickstarter. They were some other sort of weird resiny plastic, but that's the one that I painted up, so that was kind of cool. I had just moved that model. It was sitting on a shelf, and I put it someplace else so it didn't get too dusty. Like yesterday? Yeah, yesterday or the day before. What else have we got? Alfred says, I also love the wet palette. I've been using it for a while. My go-to priming paint is the Citadel Spray Primer. Works on everything and goes down perfectly every time. I don't know that I've used the Citadel stuff in a really long time. Like probably not more than 15 years. I've been using a bunch of other stuff, but I haven't used any of the Citadel sprays in a really long time. Again, and for me here, in Wisconsin, like right now, the temperature's fine, but it is crazy humid here right now because it rained it rained a good portion of the afternoon. So it's really humid, so I would not be able to go out and prime right now because it would just be gross. It wouldn't work. It would like stick funny and not set up, and there's just, yeah, and certainly now would be the absolute worst time possibly to dull coat because that would fog absolutely. So that's why I like to use the airbrush for that kind of stuff. But I'm glad that the primer from Citadel, the spray stuff, is working. And I noticed that they've started making it in colors finally, which I think is a smart move, which is probably why Army Painter did it years ago. But it's good now that they're doing it for Citadel as well. Let's see here. What's just getting back into the hobby after a very long while, says Mario. Well, good. I'm glad to hear you're back. Jesse says what you got was probably early prototypes. Speaking of giant killer robots, yeah, I mean they were like, like I said, I think in the original video, they just shipped me a box and it was just parts. They were each one of them was wrapped in tissue paper and like taped, but they were just there's no instructions. Everything was just crazy. I had to kind of sort of puzzle it out. But yeah, that's kind of what they are. I think that the they said that the models that people will get in the Kickstarter, or in the, if you do end up buying it in the store, if you didn't do the Kickstarter, once it goes to stores and places like that, those models will probably be slightly sharper detail than what they sent me. So I don't know what kind of production prototypes they were, but yeah, I don't mean they were cool looking, but yeah. Giovanni says, I found out about Tabletop Minions and Uncle Adam after someone told me to go watch your video on the wet palette. Yeah, that video I think has done a lot of good, and I hope it's done a lot of good and will continue to do so for people, because it's just, I can't even imagine not painting without it now. It's funny because I watch from time to time Duncan on the Games Workshop channel, the Warhammer TV, and I'm amazed that Games Workshop hasn't made a wet palette. The only thing I can think of is that maybe they don't want you to, maybe they do want you to waste a little bit more paint since they sell paint, but, Privateer Press sells a wet palette and they sell paint, so I don't know. That maybe is a little bit too conspiracy theory to be actually true. I don't think it's the case, but I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting to me. I mean, Lord knows that there are painters out there who are amazing who don't use it. Here and there, you come across people who are like, yeah, I've never used wet palette. I don't think Vince Venturella, I don't think he ever uses wet palette. I've watched some of his videos and he does not seem to. He uses like a regular plastic palette most of the time. I've never really seen him use a wet palette. But most of the painters that I know do. And I, like I said, I can't do without it at this point for me, so. Jesse says it started raining down here in Milwaukee about 7 p.m. Yeah, it was raining here. Up at work, it was raining around 4 and rained for about an hour, and then I chased it down to where I live, and yeah, that's how I ended up there. One of the reasons I was excited to get snuck into Gen Con was to get stuff from Badger, but they were out of my needles, says Josh. Yeah, I got to the booth on Sunday. I somehow missed it. It was one of those deals where I walked like the wrong way every single time and I missed it, so I finally stopped by on Sunday, and luckily, and I talked about this in the this past Sunday live show, I picked up this this is, you can't really tell here, this is metallic silver Stynylrez, and Stynylrez is their airbrush primer, so it's metallic silver primer. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, I'm going to be painting some Imperial Knights, one for my Death Guard and one for my Imperials. That will be perfect, because then I won't have to basically paint like the legs and all the undercarriage and all that junk first in black and then in silver. So I'll just be able to go right straight there. That's going to save me a step. Going to be spectacular. Looking forward to it. So, but when I was there on Sunday, like, they were nearly out of everything. They had very little primer left, and I think almost all their airbrushes were sold. So it's got to be a good convention for them. Patrick asks, any timetable on bat reps? I've got a lot of the terrain finished. I've got a little bit more, like most of the stuff that came with Shadow War, the crazy, like weird, like fuel tanks and junk like that. That stuff needs to be finished, so I can use it in the bat reps. A good portion of the basement needs to be at least pushed back into the darkness, so it's not in the way of the bat reps. And my Chaos Army up to 1,500 points is finished, so I will probably, maybe one of the first bat reps might be just 40k, just because I've got that, but I might do something else as well. I think I'm still waiting a little bit too on my first opponent for 40k. He needs to get his 1,500 point army mostly finished, or get it finished. It's mostly finished currently. He's got Blood Angel's army that's got a bunch of Primaris in it, and I know I've seen the Primaris finished. I know they're done, but I think he's got some other pieces and some vehicles he's got to touch up or finish. I think he's got a Storm Raven. He's got there's a lot going on with the Storm Raven. So yeah, soon. I'm going to hopefully be able to spend some point this weekend doing a bunch of basement cleaning and maybe some terrain building. The last couple of days when I've been doing any hobbying at all, when I've gotten the time, I've been basically just building and listening to audiobooks. It's been helpful. It's been meditative, kind of just to be sitting down there and building. So yeah, I've been building a bunch of Primaris. I've got 3 more Hellblasters, which are the cool plasma guys, and then those big weird jump pack dudes, the Intercessors, maybe Inceptors. The Inceptors. I've got 3 of those guys to build, and then I think I've got everything I'm going to need. Do I have I think that means I have everything in the box that came in Dark Imperium. That's good guys. So they say. Those guys are all will be done then, and that's going to make up a big portion of my 1,500 point army. So yeah, that's kind of where that's at. So yeah, it's going a little slow. The family things and everything that happened over the last week have also slowed me down a little bit, sadly. But yeah, that's kind of where it's at. Somebody else also believes that maybe that's why that GW doesn't want to support wet pallets, so we can see that maybe. Zed says GW sells pallet paper, which is true, but it's not. It's like dry pallet paper, so I wonder. It's not quite the same stuff. I was thinking of getting their Soltar. Oh, the Soltar, or no, it's not. There's no L. I think it's just Sotar airbrush. This is from Badger. Jesse says, I was thinking about getting their Sotar airbrush, but decided not to, and I think I will get one at Adepticon or one of the Iowata Eclipse. The Iowata Eclipse is the one that I use. If you've got a hobby lobby near where you live, go onto their website, like on your phone. There's a button that says coupon or weekly coupon or something like that, and nowadays it's basically constantly at one thing that's not on sale, you get 40% off of. So you just go in and you say, here you go, here's the coupon, and then you buy that airbrush and save yourself 40%. And then, excuse me, and then what you do is the next day you go back in and then you buy the compressor. Or, vice versa, however you want to do it. But definitely that's the cheapest way that I'm finding these days. There are cheaper companies out there that'll sell airbrushes, but if you want to get a good, like Iowata, if they sold Badgers, I probably would have bought a Badger. But they only seem to sell Iowata there. Well, Pache, but they do sometimes sell that brand as well. Demont says, I'll never go back after using a wet pallet. Yeah, absolutely. Same here. Josh says, wait to buy an airbrush from Badger at a convention if you can. They're dirt cheap. Yeah, they can be, definitely. They will give you some really good con deals. I mean, that's one of the nice things, because I never see Iowata, because they're a Japanese company, I think. I never see Iowata at any of the gaming conventions. I see companies that might be selling their stuff, but they're just like a game store or some other manufacturer, not a manufacturer, but a reseller. The thing about Badger is when you go and you see Badger at a convention, usually Ken is the one who's there in the booth. He is the president of the company, and they make that stuff, like in America. So, that's pretty cool. Sherles Knight says, the Sotar 2020 is a fantastic detail brush. It's designed for illustrators, so you can get up close and personal with the airbrush. I love my Badger brushes. That's another thing, another ringing endorsement. Mario says, I do have a random question. Picking up a bunch of minis for Dracula's America, 28mm scale, very cool. Will it be a big deal if I go with 30mm bases versus 25? I don't really think so. I don't think that they, as a company, they being Osprey, I don't think they really care much about the bases. The thing about base size is this. If you make the bases bigger than they should be, then yes, you're able technically to get more range because if you're measuring from the edge of the base to the thing that you're shooting at, yes, if your base is bigger, you get to shoot further, but it's also way easier for anybody to target you because they are also closer to you as well. So it kind of comes out in the wash. One of the smart things I think that they did with Age of Sigmar, frankly, Games Workshop just said, we don't care about the bases anymore. We just, use whatever you got, because they knew that there was going to be a bunch of people who were going to be like, well, I don't want to change all my bases from square to round. It's going to take forever. So they were just like, well, then don't worry about it. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, bases, like, I don't know if you went to, it'd be interesting to know if you went to a tournament for, let's say, War Machine, and your bases didn't have the rounded edges, they had the flat edges, but they were all the right size. Like, would that be a problem? I don't know. It's interesting, but some games the base size really does matter because they use it for like another indicator, but in most situations, and definitely in Osprey games, the bases are usually not that big of a deal. So if you've got something, especially if we're talking about 5 millimeters of difference, it should be fine. Yeah, definitely. I've lost my mouse. Here we go. What else have we got here? Josh says, yeah, I bought a Badger 105 at Adepticon, and he threw in some primer too, so it's even cheaper. Yeah, Ken's a good guy. He makes deals at conventions. Patriot 105. Jesse Daniels says, I have a Patriot 105 and Iwata Neo, great for base coat, but need something for more lines. See, I've never gotten much into lines because I don't know that I'm ever going to be that good. You know what I mean? Like, I like to prime, and I like to highlight or base coat, and then, highlight and do stuff like that. But getting into like actual like line work with an airbrush, that I have not tried, and I don't know. If I did, I'd have to probably get a different airbrush, or maybe a different needle at the very least, needle and a nozzle, because my Eclipse I don't think can get super fine. But then again, like I said, I basically never try. I pretty much always well, I'm gonna just do this. You know what I mean? Mr. Bristol asks, Adam, what kit would you need as a minimum to start a YouTube channel? What would you recommend for cameras, mics, etc.? That's a very good question. So, well, I mean, frankly, right now I'm using my PC, and I'm using a Yeti, a Blue. Blue is the brand name, company that makes the microphone, and the model is a Yeti. So it's a Blue Yeti, and which is a USB mic, and it works pretty well. And then this is the Logitech 922, which is their, I think, currently newest, or at least, I don't know, they're more top of the line webcam, which still is like less than $100. You could get away with just doing live shows if you wanted to start like that way. You could get away with just using your cell phone. If you wanted to edit and go through all that stuff and everything, I mean, I've got an iPhone 7, and this thing shoots 4K. You know what I mean? So you could easily do something, with this. Audio is important. So sometimes the audio on these is not great if you didn't use a microphone, but you could get a microphone to plug into this. Or you could, like what I do when I film my stuff, is I currently use a digital SLR. SLR is a single lens reflex. So it's a camera where you're looking through the lens. Those kind of cameras where you can take the lens off and put a different lens on. Interchangeable lens cameras, those are usually SLRs. Single lens reflex means when you're looking through the viewfinder, you're actually looking through the lens, and there's a mirror and a prism in between there to make that actually work. Whereas like a point and shoot type camera, when you're looking through the viewfinder, you're usually not looking through the lens. The viewfinder's up here, and the lens might be down here. So anyway, so I use a digital SLR, and I used to just plug a microphone into it, like a lapel mic, a cheap lapel mic. In my earliest videos, I did that, and it worked okay, but it had an inherent like tape hiss or something like that. It was an electronic hiss from the cheap mic or whatever the deal was. You don't want to use the on-camera microphone almost ever for much of this stuff, because it always sounds weird and tinny and echoey and problematic. So in that situation, I would tell you, use like what I do is I record with a shotgun mic that's plugged into an external recorder, and then so I have to record on the machine, this recorder, and then I have the camera, so I turn both of those on record at the same time, or roughly around the same time, and then I clap like that, so that when I go back to edit later on, I'll be able to see those 3 points in the audio waveform, and then I can line up my audio from the good recorder with the audio that's crappy that gets recorded automatically with the camera, which is frequently known as a scratch track. So you put those together, and then now you've got decent audio and good video and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, I would tell you to focus more on audio. Like, you could easily use a cell phone as long as you figure out a good way to do audio at the same time, because people, especially in our kind of little sub niche, people will forgive lousy video, but they won't forgive lousy audio nearly as much, which is why I get so flustered when I do a Sunday show and there's been an update of the software that I use for the live stuff, and it stops using this mic and it starts using the mic in the webcam. Drives me nuts, because the mic in the webcam is not nearly as good as this mic over here. So as long as you do good audio, you can get away with sort of lousy video. And there's a bunch of different ways to do it, but yeah, really, as far as that's concerned, have some decent light. Like right now, I'm not using any professional lighting over here. What I've got is, do you know what an OT light is? Let me, hang on a second here. I can do something fancy. I can do this and go there. This is the Miniature Building Authority, which I'll come back to. I was going to show you a little bit of the stuff that I got from them. So, I'm going to type in OTTLI. So an OT light is like, it's kind of like that thing. Let's see if there's another better version. They're used for, crafts and stuff like that. So I have a light like this, only it's an older version. No, I don't need to pick a charity, thank you. And I just put it straight up, and then I just take a piece of typing paper and I curled it into a into a tube and slid it over there to make a diffuser, because otherwise it would look like this, which we don't want. So I just throw this little piece of paper over the top, and then it works out real nice. So this is not the exact light, but it's like this. But yeah, literally, you don't need super fancy stuff. I have some fancy stuff, like the light that I use now when I'm downstairs doing my normal videos. That's a fancy light, and it's got some really nice features that really help me in the long run. It is huge, like the diffuser on it is immense and takes up way more of the basement than I would like, but it works out pretty nicely now. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that. Let's see here. I'm way behind a bit now in the chat. Let's see here. Josh McCarthy, Mr. Bristol. I had a Sotar and a Neo, but decided to go all Badger, so I have the Neo to a friend who got the 105. Jesse Daniel says Badger's in Illinois, so their office is close to Adepticon overall. Yeah, they are. They are based out of. I believe they're based out of someplace in Illinois. All right, going through. Jesse Daniel says that's a good question for you to have for your LVO panels. Yeah, well, exactly. I did, not this last year, 2017, but 2016, I did 2 panels at Adepticon about the same stuff. One was all about the technical stuff for YouTube, the cameras and the microphones and all that jazz. And then the other one was, I don't know why I still have this up. The other one was about like marketing and branding and that kind of stuff, and search engine optimization and all that junk stuff that there's a lot to learn if you want to get into it. Frankly, there's a lot. So yeah. Josh asks, is the 922, the Logitech 922, the one you can put yourself in front of digital backdrops with a green screen? Yes, technically. Though you can really do that with most cameras, but then it depends on the software. Like the camera itself has something like that built into it if you're using the Logitech software. But since I'm using XSplit to do the encoding and everything for the video, then then I would do it through that instead. So, oops. But yeah, that's where they would get that from. Primaris on 25. No, that would look funny. Maybe they could stand on one foot. No, that's true. Yeah, if you put the Primaris Marines, or if you like, or Terminators, Well, I mean, honestly, Necrons barely fit on 25s because they have a wide stance. Those Necrons. I'm just saying. Yeah. Josh McCarthy says loves the audio is why I deleted my first video. Yeah. Like I was kind of saying about that, in our little sub niche, good audio is super important, and it's interesting because a lot of people right now are not looking at this video. They're listening to it because you're probably working on your own hobby stuff, whether you're watching this live or you're watching it later on. In our little sub niche, wargaming videos, they mostly get listened to because people are listening to it while they are sitting there and painting their own thing in front of their face. So, you've run through a bunch of your podcasts, and now you've run through maybe your audiobooks or whatever, and you need something else to listen to because you got to listen to something while you're painting. I'm the same way. So you just start listening to YouTube videos. So what I found out early on was that people weren't really looking at the videos. Some people are, but a lot of people are just listening to the videos. So people have asked me in the past, like, well, why don't you put in more, like when you're doing your video and you're talking about a thing, why don't you show a picture of the thing and then do that? And it's like, well, because frankly, a lot of times people just aren't paying attention. Like they're listening, but they're not looking at the screen. So if I spend the extra time to go find a picture, put it into the edit, go through all that stuff, and then no one's looking at it anyway. So that's why the videos, for the tutorial ones, like with Sam, those people are probably watching a lot more. But for when I'm just talking about like, hey, you should use wet palette, why not? Or or hey, you should think about gaming like this or whatever. Those are, I mean, what's going on right now, other than the fact before where I was showing you some stuff on the other camera over here, or I was showing you like the this thing or whatever. Most of this video is just me yammering at you, so you don't have to see my face to do it. You know what I mean? So the audio is important because people are listening more often than not than they are watching. When I was doing the t-shirt sale last year in 2016, I was putting up every once in a while some of the other videos that were going on during that time. I was putting this lower third that would pop up about the t-shirt sale, and it would pop up down there. And I was like, I bet nobody's going to see that because they're not looking at it. So what I did was when I would want that to pop up, I played like this. I found the sound online of like a guitar riff, not like a, but almost like just like a weird sort of like plingy kind of guitar. And then I would just play that noise as I was talking, and then that would be like the symbol that would tell people, oh, hey, this thing popped up at the bottom. And I talked to people who were like, yeah, I was listening to your video, and all of a sudden there was this weird guitar noise, and I looked, and then I saw the thing, and I'm like, yeah, that's how you got to do it. So yeah. Boop, 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 boop. What else have we got here? Clicking, clicking, clicking. I gotta get a quieter mouse is what I gotta get. Patrick says, yeah, I've watched tons of crappy video, but bad audio is not tolerable. True, I agree. Jesse Daniels says, thinking of hobby lights, I use a swing arm LED light. Yeah, those would work great. I mean, honestly, you just need to be able to diffuse them and soften them a little bit. Like I said, if I take the diffuser off, then it looks like this. And this diffuser is seriously, you can see the tape. It's just a piece of, I've just made a tube of a piece of printer paper, and then I just put it over, and then it's like a soft box, except it didn't cost me anything, almost. Let's see here. Giovanni says, a suggestion for you when you do bat wraps, make it fun and lighthearted. Yeah, I am not a pro gamer, so it's gonna have to be fun and lighthearted. I can't give anybody any strategy tips, so it's gonna have to be funny. Too many of them come off as mechanical and lack good soul or excitement. Also, a good microphone helps a lot. Yes, I agree as well. Originally, my plan was to have an omnidirectional microphone hanging from the ceiling, because the thing that I hate about bat reps is that a lot of times people, like the guy with the camera is the only guy you can hear. So he says stuff, and he's like, okay, well then on turn 3 here, this is going to happen. And then the guy across the table says something, and I can't hear what he said, because the microphone is on the camera, which is right by this guy's head. So my thought was, I'll put an omnidirectional microphone hanging it down, and you'll be able to hear both people. But that didn't work out, because technical difficulties. Let's just say that. So instead, what I did was I got two wireless lapel mics. So it's like a pack with a battery, and you stick it on your belt, and then there's a lapel mic, and they'll both go into the camera, and then both people, you won't have that thing where like the guy who's holding the camera you can hear and the other guy isn't. They should both have the same, strength of voice. And I'm also trying to figure out, like, I don't want to have shaky cam. There's just a bunch of different things I'm trying to work on. Like, I'm hoping that I can do them well. Like what's her, Miranda, Wargamer girl. She and her husband do great bat reps for War Machine and Hordes, but they take a really long time to do. Like, he went to school for film and is into that, and he does all the editing for the most part, from what I understand. But they take a really long time to make, and so I'm trying to find that kind of happy medium, because there's like the guys at Mini Wargaming crank them out constantly and super fast, so they're all about efficiency, which is why sometimes there's really shaky cam, or the editing might be a touch dodgy, or there could just be problems or whatever. But they're trying to get out, they put out like one a day or something like that, maybe even more. So that, speed to them is the whole deal. I'm not going to have that problem, so I'm not going to do them that fast. I don't do anything that fast. So yeah, it's coming. It's just, I don't want to screw it up. I mean, obviously, if you did it and then you fixed it later on, it's not like it's the end of the world. If the first couple of them are screwy, don't ever not do it because you're concerned that it's not going to be right the first time. Just do it and then learn from it. But for me, so that's not my big concern, but I do want to be mindful of how I'm putting it together. My big issue right now is just getting the actual logistics and the terrain and all that stuff put together and finished, and then I'll start just making videos, and then we'll find out how they work, and then I'll change them as I go along. That's the plan. Bat reps can be really hit or miss, says VJ Morph. Not a fan of Frontline's new format for bat reps. I got an email because I bought something from them earlier in the year, so I'm on their mailing list, and I got an email about their new bat reps, but I haven't had a chance to watch any, so I should do that just to find out. I guess I don't subscribe to their channel. I thought I did. Huh. Because otherwise it would show up in my YouTube stuff. A lot of YouTubers talk about this whole thing about how, like, their videos don't get seen by everybody, and they tell you should go click that little bell, and then the videos will show up and everything like that. And they think that they're being algorithmically kind of edited out. You know how, like, when you post things on Facebook, not everybody sees it because of the algorithms? There's a lot of YouTubers who believe very strongly that this is what's happening in their videos. They're like, well, I have 2 million subscribers, but only, 200,000 people watch this video. Well, maybe only 200,000 people wanted to watch that particular video. But maybe next week you got 300,000 viewers, but maybe none of them were the ones that watched the previous video. I mean, my point is that anytime that I start to think to myself, I haven't seen any videos from this person in a while. I wonder if YouTube is hiding their videos from me. And then I should go, click the little bell to be notified. Then I go look and see when their last video was. And as it turns out, they haven't made a video in 3 months. So I have never yet been in a situation where I've been like, I don't see any of your videos. And then find out that you have been making them. And I've just been denied, seeing them. Now, that being said, I do the majority of my YouTube watching on Apple TV. And I wonder if Apple TV if it gets like a direct RSS feed and shows me everything all the time, and that's why I don't miss stuff. Because this is interesting. When people that I subscribe to, when they're going to do a live show, I see, and they schedule it ahead of time, I see like a placeholder for it in my subscription list of all the videos from my people that I subscribe to. I will see a placeholder for a video coming up before it goes live, but I never see that in the subscription tab when I actually happen to look at YouTube through a browser. So that's interesting. I haven't thought of that. But yeah, so that's why I just generally don't ever tell people, oh, make sure to click that little bell. I don't know if it actually really does anything. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but Man, I totally got. I don't even know where the hell I was going anymore. Oh, Frontline, right? Yeah. So I guess I must not be subscribed to Frontline, which is why I haven't seen any of their stuff, or I've seen some of it, but it's been a long time, so I don't think I've done that. Jason asks, have you ever thought about posting a definitive Uncle Adam approved list of things you use to hobby, like your camo primer, purple cleaner, airbrushes, paints, etc.? Yeah, maybe. That's not a bad idea. Just a list of like the things that I like. I don't know. Maybe. Like I've mentioned a bunch of them separately in different videos, obviously. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. That's maybe not a bad idea. Someone earlier, before the video, someone had a question about, or had an idea about how maybe for the next month, if the Irregulars get to ask a bunch of questions before the video. So maybe even if you can't be here live, but you could still put in a question and I could answer it, maybe, and then, then you could watch it again later on. I might try to do that because that might be a good idea, just to kind of get some questions. I mean, some of this stuff is stuff that's just coming up, but some of it, especially things that are timely, like talking about Spartan and Tor and On Lam, all three of them kind of going out of business and such. I mean, those types of things maybe are not a bad idea for going forward on some of these, definitely. Click. Where are we at? Frontline's new format has a lot of time lapse on an overhead cam using an on-screen overlays for kills and movement. The mini wargaming ones are better, as I like to see the rules, interactions, and dice rolls. So, the overhead cam, I basically never find useful. I have to admit, I don't. I've watched Bat Reps. I've been trying to watch a lot of them lately just to try to get ideas. Like I said, because I'm not a competitive player, it's rare that I'm watching one unless it's kind of funny or I enjoy it or I enjoy the people. But I've been watching other ones just to see how other people are doing. I mean, anytime I see like, oh, here's a top-down view and like an inset and a this and a, I just go, for me anyway, it's just not interesting. Like I want there to be kind of a story. I want some personality from the people. That's kind of, that's why, like, if I do watch Bat Reps on Mini Wargaming, it's more often than not, it's banter Bat Reps, because it's usually like Dave and he's being funny or whatever and stuff, and he's a good guy. So those are the ones that I kind of enjoy. And he always has to say at the beginning, hey, this is not going to be a serious thing, because I think the comments constantly are like, you're doing this wrong and this strategy's not sound and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's why it's called a banter Bat Rep. That's the whole point. Anyway, so I think that sometimes, I feel as if sometimes their comments sections can be a little toxic, but they're the biggest in the world as far as wargaming is concerning. So I guess maybe that's why, like just that's where everybody knows them. So maybe that's part of what the deal is. And that's the thing that's also I'm concerned about. So I'm gonna have to make it very clear that we are not using good strategy in these games. We are not using optimized lists in these games. We are having a good time and maybe hopefully showing off some cool paint jobs. And like that's about it. There's plenty of other companies out there or groups or whatever. Like there's a website, or not a website, well, they have a website as well, but there's a channel called Tabletop Tactics from England. And I like theirs quite a bit because, well, there's parts of the thing that I like about theirs and there's parts that I don't. I like them because they have good personalities and they're kind of funny, and I enjoy that. The problem that I don't like is that I don't like the whole kind of, what do you call it? I don't like the... They go through the list and they talk about their list for like the first 20 or 30 minutes of the video. I mean, like a really long time. And I kind of don't care. So I usually fast forward past that. But, yeah, so that's kind of where that's at. Melanie Dawn says, what the heck? It's not Sunday. That's true. It's not. No, this is the Irregulars chat. So, yes. We're here doing the Irregulars chat thing. My video feed locked up. Can you guys still see me or hear me or anything along those lines? Did I lose internet? I don't think I did. VJ Morph says, I always use the bell for live shows. Yeah, I see pretty frequently. Let's see here. I can't tell if everything's locked up. Oh, no, it must not be. The Games Workshop ones use way too much overhead, says VJ. That's why I never watch their wit. They hardly never watch their Twitch. I only watch for the inside of the studio stuff. Yeah. So that's kind of... I've never watched any of theirs because I don't really use Twitch. I should sit down and look at one of theirs. I've seen their setup. I've watched them film them live. That was cool, like at Adepticon. But I've never actually messed with their stuff. So, cool. All right. Well, it's about 8:30. Jesse says it was locking up earlier in the evening. Well, that's weird. I hope that there's not a problem with my internet. I did just reboot the router on Sunday, actually, so it should be okay. VJ says, yes, tabletop tactics are good, but I agree the list breakdowns are boring. For me, honestly, I see a lot of videos on YouTube. I don't really watch regular television much anymore. I just pretty much watch YouTube for my particular brand of enjoyment. I see a lot of videos that take way too long to get started. That's why with my videos, the Friday videos, the very first thing I do is I don't run a 30-second intro. I'm like, hey, in this video, this is what's going to happen. So you know right off the bat, oh, I'm going to be watching a video about this. Cool. And then there's a very short intro, and then I get into it. Editors, filmmakers, all that kind of stuff have a tendency to sometimes fall in love with their footage. And so they don't want to edit anything. And sometimes if you spent a whole bunch of time making a really cool intro that you think is really super cool, it's not that cool once someone's watched 100 of your videos and it takes 30 to 40 seconds to go through the intro. They just fast forward past it. So when I was making the new intro, which at this point is now 1.5 2 years old, I wanted to make it as short as possible, but I wanted to make it get the point across too. I put models, miniatures in the videos or in the intro so you could see, oh, I bet this guy's going to be talking about little toy soldiers. I get it. I put in a clanging sword, a machine gun rat-tat-tat for World War II, a laser gun blast, and then dice throwing. So seriously, even if you had no idea what was going on, you get the feeling with the dice throwing and all that, I think I get it. And that's the plan. But I've watched way too many videos that have got really long intros. Tabletop Tactics, like I do, they do great stuff, but they will just scan over the battlefield slowly to fancy music for like a really long time. And yikes, yeah, that sometimes I just fast forward past it. So, but anyway, so that's pretty much it for this evening. Melanie says, did you watch the new Necromunda video? Those Eschers are gorgeous. I'll have to take a look at it and check it out. But anyway, that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go downstairs in the basement, and I was going to show you some stuff. I was going to show you some of the shanties, but maybe I'll make a video about just the shanties because they're really cool. Then maybe we'll be able to get better close-ups than just this weird little camera over here, which is sort of upside down. But anyway, I appreciate everybody coming and checking it out again. And thanks for the patience with everything being late and all that kind of stuff due to all that. So anyway, again, like I said, I hope to get I'm going to be getting the bat reps out soon. And so you guys will hopefully be able to give me some feedback on that kind of stuff. And if you're going to be at Las Vegas Open, I'll see you guys then. And if you're going to be someplace else, there's plenty of different places, hopefully, that I might be able to catch up with you guys and see you. So, all right, I'm going to go, and I hope you guys have, and all of you folks in general, have a good night.